Welcome to this explainer. You know, we hear about AI constantly. It's writing essays, it's generating wild images, and it's answering our most obscure questions in seconds. But today, we're diving into something you've probably never even considered. We are going to look at what actually happens to your neighborhood when the massive physical brain of AI moves in right down the street. So where does your AI homework helper actually live? You might think it just lives right there inside your phone, or maybe floating around ethereally in the cloud. But here's the thing, the cloud isn't actually a cloud at all. It requires a very real, very massive physical home to function. Every single time you ask a chatbot a question, real-world machines have to physically spin up to find your answer.
In that physical home, it lives down the street in a gigantic, windowless warehouse called a hyperscale data center. Picture this, a brand new, block-long building moves in right down your street. From the outside, it honestly just looks like a massive beige box, but inside, it is packed with rows upon rows of incredibly powerful computer servers. And to keep those servers running, this single facility can consume more power and water than the rest of your entire town combined.
Now, you might be wondering why this is suddenly such a big deal. Well, there is a massive difference in scale between the old internet and the new AI internet. Let's compare a standard internet search versus asking an AI chatbot a question. When you do a standard web search, you're basically just retrieving existing information. But when you ask an AI chatbot a question, that computer is actively generating a brand new response by performing trillions of mathematical calculations every second. AI requires significantly more computing power and heat. It's literally like comparing the energy it takes to turn on a single light bulb to the energy it takes to run a massive industrial oven.
Which brings us to our first major issue. Section: draining local water supplies. To keep all those super hot computer chips from just completely melting down, these places often use evaporative cooling towers. The experts at the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy actually put it perfectly. They said, wherever they choose to put a data center, it is like a giant soda straw sucking water out of that basin. If you live nearby, this is a huge deal because that is the exact same freshwater supply your family relies on for drinking, cooking, and bathing. And once that water evaporates to cool the servers, it doesn't just magically return to your local river.
5 million. That is the number of gallons of water a single large data center can consume in just one day. To put that into perspective, 5 million gallons is enough to supply a town of up to 50,000 people. This gets especially alarming when we realize that roughly 2/3 of the data centers built recently are located in areas that already struggle with severe drought and water scarcity, like Arizona and Texas.
And water isn't the only local resource taking a hit. Let's talk about the air. Section: dirty air and asthma risks.
Here is the reality of the internet. Data centers cannot ever turn off. If the power grid dips, the internet can't just crash, right? So first, the local power grid gets strained, which honestly happens a lot more often now because the data center is using so much electricity. You might even notice the lights flickering in your own house. Second, the data center briefly loses main power. And third, to prevent a crash, massive diesel backup generators kick on. We are talking about rows of giant, train-sized engines roaring to life all at once.
If you're the concerned local resident living next door, these backup generators create some very real community health risks. They emit high levels of fine particulate matter, or PM2.5, and release nitrogen oxides. This is essentially toxic smog that can embed deep in your lungs. It can create a higher risk for heart disease and absolutely can trigger asthma, particularly in local children. Oh, and on top of breathing in dirty air, these generators create up to 100 decibel noise, which is incredibly similar to a jackhammer. Imagine trying to sleep while someone operates a loud jackhammer right outside your bedroom window. That is the actual reality for some of these communities.
Now, besides air and water, this new neighbor impacts your wallet. Section: why your bills are rising.
To feed the massive electrical appetite of a new hyperscale data center, utility companies often have to spend billions of dollars to upgrade the local power grid. They have to build whole new electrical substations and string up heavy-duty transmission lines. But here's the catch. When power companies build expensive new transmission lines for a data center, local residents often foot the bill. The massive tech companies don't always pay for those upgrades. Often those costs are passed down directly to everyday people, meaning the families and small businesses living right there in the area.
$18. In some areas, like Western Maryland, experts predict the arrival of new data centers could force families to pay an extra $18 every single month on their electricity bill. That is over $200 a year directly out of a local resident's pocket just to support the infrastructure for a massive tech company's servers.
Okay, I know that sounds pretty bleak, but it is not
all bad news. Engineers are on it. Section: Tech's Green Energy Solutions.
If we look at current data center energy sources, we've got natural gas at 40%, renewables at 24%, nuclear at 20%, and coal at 15%. So yeah, a lot of the power feeding these places still comes from fossil fuels. But tech companies are investing billions to change this mix. They are purchasing massive amounts of clean energy, like solar and wind. Some are even signing deals to revive nuclear power plants. The goal is to run these giant facilities on 24/7 carbon-free energy, so they can completely stop polluting our local grids.
And thankfully, we have actionable solutions that can fix these neighborhood problems right now. If the neighborhood problem is huge freshwater waste, the engineering solution is closed-loop and immersion cooling. For toxic diesel exhaust, we can use Stack's emissions capture filters. And to combat those high energy bills, data centers can rely on on-site solar and battery storage instead of just draining the local grid. Let's look a little closer at two of these incredibly cool technologies.
First up is immersion cooling, literally dunking the computers. This is a process where hot computer servers are submerged directly into tanks of special synthetic oil to absorb heat. Instead of using loud fans and evaporating millions of gallons of your town's drinking water, engineers dunk the hot AI chips directly into this non-conductive fluid. It safely absorbs all that intense heat without short-circuiting anything. It's highly efficient and a total game changer because it drastically reduces the amount of water a data center steals from the local supply.
Next, let's talk about cleaning the air with Stack's filters. When those noisy diesel generators absolutely have to turn on, companies can use this tech, which connects directly to the diesel generator exhaust. Think of it like a giant high-tech N95 mask for the generator. It traps 99% of fine particulate matter, and it captures 95% of nitrogen oxides before they ever reach the outside air. This keeps the neighborhood air safe and breathable for the kids living right down the street.
So, how do we put this all together? Section: A Sustainable AI Future.
Researchers at Cornell University recently mapped out exactly how to fix this with their Roadmap to 2030. Year 1 focuses on smart siting, meaning we stop building these things in the dry desert and start building them in cooler wind belt states where natural weather helps cool the servers. By year 3, the goal is upgrading to that advanced liquid cooling we just talked about. And by year 5, decarbonizing the grid with renewables. If we follow this roadmap, we can cut data center water use by an incredible 86% and slash carbon emissions by 73%.
And I think this quote from the Cornell University researchers really hits the nail on the head. The AI infrastructure choices we make this decade will decide whether AI accelerates climate progress or becomes a new environmental burden. Ultimately, the massive tech companies building the backbone of the internet need to coordinate closely with local towns. They have a responsibility to make sure their incredible advancements don't become an environmental nightmare for the everyday people living next door.
The AI revolution is already here, guys, and it is absolutely here to stay. But as we've seen in this explainer, we have the engineering tools and the knowledge to demand a better way forward. We can ensure that our digital future doesn't come at the cost of our local community's health, water, and wallets. So I want to leave you with this final question to think about. When the next hyperscale data center moves in down your street, will it be a toxic neighbor or a green one? Thanks so much for joining me today, and definitely keep exploring this topic.